Hey, everybody, welcome to the Profit Tool Belt podcast. Today, we're going tech. For those of you who like tech, for those of you who like toys, I think you're going to like this episode because I'm talking to Joe Burgett. Now, Joe started out as a GC, and then he moved into being a professor of drone technology. And you're going to hear use cases and applications for how drones are used in construction, both residential and commercial. And I know you're going to love it. Stay tuned and learn more. Mr. Joe Burgett, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dom. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Gee, you and I started talking before Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like that was a lifetime ago. Because I'm a professor, so I'm on Christmas break now, and we got classes that start up in a couple of days. So it seems like a long time ago, even though it really wasn't.
Yeah. Gee, you just told everybody you're a professor. So let me just remind everybody, don't hang up. He's actually a legit construction guy.
That's right. I did something before going working at Clemson,
Well,
but yeah.
yeah, well, that's right, because you were a GC before, right?
I was. So I've been in Clemson for about 10 years, but before that, I was lived in Florida. I graduated from the University of Florida with our building construction degree. It's very similar to our construction science and management degree that I teach now. But I worked in large commercial construction. Um,
Uh,
uh, got my license GC, did some stuff in the mid-state, and then down. Most of it was in down South Florida, doing hospitals, biomedical, courthouses, hotels, residential, but on the community scale, like condos and retirement campuses, that sort of
right.
thing.
Senior living, yeah, all that big
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Yeah, some of the senior living, especially the stuff that's tied to universities, that's kind of a booming thing right now, and
Yeah.
back then as well.
It's funny how many people we talk to that somehow touch that kind of industry because I've had guys on the show here that just do Murphy beds for dorms. And
Yeah,
so they're still in that bigger, scope of commercial work. We touch it's all over. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
How
yeah.
did you how
No,
did
it
you
was
get drawn to that? It was your family in construction or?
well, no, not really. I mean, in high school, let's just say my academia increased over the years, but in high school, I got through.
Yeah.
I nailed high school, and then started out at a community college, and I needed a job, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I went and worked for a company that built and sold sheds. And part of my job was and where I was at, it was outside Tampa in St. Petersburg, Florida. You needed a permit, and there was like 19 different
For sheds?
municipalities for sheds. Yeah. And in Pinellas County had like 19 different municipalities. So
Oh.
so the GC didn't want to go pull a permit. So they hired me fresh out of high school to go to all these municipalities and pull permits. And I got to know the guys building shed. I mean, 2x4, built them in a day type of sheds.
Yeah.
And I got a little flavor for it. And the owner was a GC. So and he had some other projects going on. So I got a little flavor for it. And then freshman year, I said, well, this is what I want to do. I found out that University of Florida had a very good construction management program. So
Okay.
I went through and never looked back.
Okay, just really quickly, I don't understand why somebody needs a shed in Florida. So what's the use? Is it for your golf cart? Is it for holding your gator bait station? What do you guys
Yeah,
doing there?
Gator Bay. Well, no, I mean, I think the cynical answer is a revenue stream, right? So, I mean, if some municipality, I mean, and every municipality was different. So part of the job,
Mm,
was to know what sheds needed. If it was some of them, if it was 100 square feet or less, did not need a permit. But if it was more, it did. And then I think the other thing was, the state got a little scared after Andrew and some of the crazy stuff after the hurricanes.
mm,
So, in a hurricane, sheds become, no one cares about the shed, but they
projectiles.
become projectiles.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, there's a little bit of that to really make sure that they're tied down and that the straps on the trusses are there.
Okay. Well, don't visit our cottage on the lake because it is the product of what happens when there's no building inspector. And you can talk to my dad about that as much as you want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it may not be susceptible to the hurricanes,
Yeah.
so
We
why,
get snow
why?
loads there. Yeah,
So, well, yeah, exactly. Different direction of the loads.
that's right. Hey, Joe, today we're here to talk about how drones are used in construction. So you're a
Yeah.
drone expert. And by drone, I don't mean like droning on like a professor, although I'm
That's
sure
a
you've heard
bonus.
that is just a bonus. Can you tell us before we get into that, because you're an expert on drones, that's what you do at Clemson, right?
Yep. Yep, that's
How
right.
how did you go from GC to drone expert?
Okay, so good question. And I should tell you, I mean, expert kind of gets, as a GC, hairs on the back of my neck always stand up with expert because I always think of liability, and I still have that phobia in me.
Okay.
But I'll tell you this, though, and this is probably my best credential. If you go to look at my truck and you look at my license plate, it does say Dr. Drone on it. So it is like part of
Oh,
my identity.
you wear it on the
Top
inside.
Oh man, top to bottom. So first of all, drones have not been around for very long. In fact,
Right.
I mean, without boring into the history, we in the U.S. were not really allowed to use them for commercial applications till 2016. So
Hmm.
prior to that, they were a novelty experiment. But in 2016, the world opened up. And being in construction, I mean, like you, me, everyone on the call, there's inefficiencies. I mean, everyone has seen those charts about comparing construction industry to other manufacturing productivity rates, and it's always embarrassing, right?
Yeah.
So, being in academia and being a researcher, my goal was to look for ways of doing our job better, faster, cheaper, better margins, all those kind of good things.
Sure.
And then drones came around, and I would be lying if the 14-year-old boy in me wasn't like initially interested in that. But then once you get past that, and you start diving into what the data can produce and how it can allow you to make more intelligent decisions, communicate better with subs and owners, and display progress and cap
Mm.
liability. All of that added up to positive gain. And the cost to get into the drone game is really low by
It's
comparison.
not very expensive, is it? What
No,
would it cost to have a quality? Let's think about a roofer, for example, just as an
sure,
example. I mean, it could be a guy that does decks that wants
right.
to show me a cool schematic and win the deal over the next deck guy. But let's just use roofing, for example. What would it
Yep.
cost a roofer to have a quality camera on a trustworthy drone?
Right. Okay. So it's a good question. I'm gonna parse it out because again, a professor, I can't answer anything in one sentence or like with one number.
That's okay. I'm a
Um,
podcast host. I'm the same.
there's a lot of similarities in what we do.
That's right.
Okay, so if your question was the drone itself, so if you're talking about hardware, and again, it ranges, blah blah blah, but if you wanted a number for just a good drone, I would say $2,500. But what I would caveat with that though
Mm.
is and this is the mistake I think people make when they want to stand up a program is there's some other costs associated with it. One, you need a license, in the US to have a license. I mean, that's $175 plus you got to train some people, on how to pass the test.
Mm.
There's insurance involved, and so if you want to be insured, which I recommend, that's another $400 to $500 a year. And training, so that's another piece to it. At Clemson, I teach drones to our undergraduate and graduate students, but I also do professional development for contractors who want to get
Mm.
in the drone market.
Right.
And there's other considerations that you need. You need to know about, where does privacy fit into that? Where's the legality of that? Just because you can see something, or can you really trust the data that you're getting? And what about controlled airspace and all those kind of scary things that if you just kind of
Mm.
wahoo and get a drone up in the air, you could get in trouble with. So let me end the answer with this by saying $2,500 for the hardware, but I would say probably closer to $6,000, maybe $7,000, to
Once you're in
complete
with
the package.
software and camera and everything, yeah.
Exactly. So I didn't even mention software, but that's another one too. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's I'm jumping around a little bit, but because people might not be familiar with the idea of drones, and the reason I want to have it on here is because if a listener isn't familiar with it, I want to get it in their mind as a potential, maybe it's a 5-year plan, maybe it's a 3-year plan, maybe it's a year ago that they wanted to
Mhm.
have this, but I guess you would call it a use case for residential, and what's a use case for commercial, institutional, industrial, which I could see a lot easier in my mind. But how would a residential contractor use drones, and how would a commercial one use drones?
Yeah, so there might be more overlap than you think, but so a couple of things. So at the end of the day, a drone is a flying sensor, all right, and the most common sensor on there is just a camera,
Mm.
but there's other sensors like thermal cameras, which is more maybe more on the residential side or on the commercial side. But let's just stick with the camera, all right.
Mm.
One of the nice things, and this is kind of like entry level, right? It's a flying camera. So you can now get really cool marketing pictures and videos for your website, and potential customers or current customers that you can email them and show them, hey, what's going on with the job. So entry level pictures and video, really good ones. But that is like the tip of the iceberg. And really, I hate to even mention that because it's a powerful tool, but it's by nowhere near what contractors are using for.
Right.
So the next maybe level up from that would be it's called photogrammetry, which is a big word that really means that you take a whole bunch of 2D images, you throw them in software or an application, drone deploy or context capture, Pix4D, whatever, and it takes all those 2D images from your drone and creates a 3D digital twin. Now that is a powerful tool for a couple of different reasons. One, if you've got a client, let's just stick with residential right now. You've got a client and you're building them a job. But the home builders that I know, where they get their customers are from word of mouth, just talking. So if you can send your client every week or every month, a 3D model of their home and the progress that's going, you can email them a link. And then they open it up on their computer, they turn the model around, they turn it upside down, they look, and they share it. They share that link with their friends.
It's cool, right? They send it to their buddy.
Exactly. It's the cool thing. And then for residential, the one use case on top of that is for quality control. What we do, and it takes 5 minutes to do, but it's an incredibly powerful tool, where we take an aerial image of the drone, straight up, looking straight down.
Yeah.
We throw it in the same software, and then we throw a PDF drawing of the plans, the floor plan, for example, the foundation plan, and we plop them right on top of one another. So, and we can use that to quality control to make sure that all the footings are in the exact right position. Okay. All of the columns are in the right exact position. And it's really easy. It's so easy to understand. You can show that to a customer who is not a contractor. That's not their business. But if they can see, hey, look, there's concrete and dirt, and here's the lines that are on these plans, and they're right on top of one another. Even someone who's not in the business is going to be able to say, man, they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do, which is all you can ask contractors to do.
Can I go back to the thermography thing? Thermography is heat, like picking up heat signatures or something. So is there an application here for the window contractor or the installation contractor to come by and say, hey, Mr. Rubino, we're going to do a drone shot of your house, and I'm going to show you where the heat's leaving your windows, and use that as an excuse to say, now you see, we've got these with quadruple paned vinyl blah blah blahs, and
right.
But is that an application for drones as well?
Oh my goodness, yes. So thermography is like the next case, or is really the leading use case for UASs or unmanned aircraft systems. So a few applications for this. So one, I should everyone wants to know what the cost is. So I'll start with that and then kind of lead into how it's a really great investment. You can get a really good aerial drone got a thermal camera on it for $8,000. So that's the magnitude we're talking about, not 100,000 or something. I mean, it is within reach. And what the cameras are, what really makes them special is what's called an infrared camera. An infrared is just a camera that reads, infrared. It's out at the EM spectrum that our eye can't pick up, but it's just like light that we can't see. And it's been around for a long, long time. Law enforcement's been using it, military's been using it, all this kind of good stuff. But the hotter an object gets, the more infrared radiation it emits. Everything emits radiation. I mean, everything, a desk, a computer, a laptop, a piece of ice emits IR radiation. Sure. And the more it emits, or the hotter it is, the more IR radiation emits. So we can fly this sensor around and we can see parts of a building that are emitting more radiation versus others.
So leaky chimney, leaky windows, leaky door gaskets.
Yeah, and when you say leaky in terms of heat loss,
and
leaky in terms of moisture too. Because when you've got water behind insulation or roofing, water has different thermal properties than insulation does. During the day, if you got water behind ephes, for example, during the day, that ephes is going to get hot. and the water is going to get hot, and you put an IR camera on it, and you just see hot, right? But then at night, right, the ephes is styrofoam. It's going to cool off quickly, right? But the water, that's got a high specific heat. It's going to hold on to its heat, and you're going to see a nice warm puddle. And it's a great way of spotting, hey, we got moisture back there. Something looks weird, and let's go take a look at that before mold and all the bad stuff that goes along with that.
So let me stop for a second and make sure that everybody listening understands. There's an application here in your estimator, in your marketing process, to say, look, we came in, we flew a drone around with you. Here's the images. Can I talk to you about it?
Yeah.
Which is cool factor through the roof.
Yeah.
Show me drones of all, hey, there's a bird's nest there. I was always wondering, there's chicks in it. You probably see that too. But now we could say, look, those windows are worse than you thought. We could do some quick calculations. It's actually costing you money. And then relate that back to the windows and say, now we're going to save you money with X, Y, and Z.
Oh yeah. In pre-construction, pre-construction is huge. I mean, huge, because you can gain additional intelligence on a building and potentially sell, like you were saying, sell the windows that wasn't in your scope, but it's an easy use case to make. You can cap liability, because let's just say you got to go on the roof. You can go on the roof and say, man, this thing is leaking like a sieve, before you go out there, right? So you can say to the owner, hey, look, we're about ready to start this job. Look at this. Your roof is got some issues. And they might say, yeah, we're going to replace it next year. But then at least you got in your in the documents that if something were to go wrong, hey, what the as-built conditions were.
I got to tell you, so my house is 3.5 stories, just the way it's built, right? It's an old 1893 home. And so, it's got a half sunken basement or a half raised basement. And then there's 3 stories on top of that. Then there's a peak. Well, the guy comes to do a quote. He's got a 25er on his truck. He's not going to get up on my roof.
Right.
So your estimator now, I would imagine this would be a great use case to say, look, estimators, let's train you on drone. He can just pop it up there, go have a look at the whole home from the roof and say, yep, you've got leaks or you've got heat loss or, whatever the application is, and say, Mr. and Mrs. Rubino, we can put together a quote, but here's your problem points. Well, the next guy that shows up with a 25-foot ladder, who's my competitor, is going to go, yeah, we could probably do this job. We'll know better when we get up there. Well, you've just killed that. That guy's out.
Yeah.
That guy's not going to win this deal.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I've had a lot of thought about that, especially with roofers. And here's an idea that comes free with the chat. But if I was a roofer, I would follow storms and with a drone.
Oh, they do. There's a storm chasing thing. And yeah, roofing's got a thing there. But tell me what you do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, same thing. Look for hail. I mean, anywhere, look at the weather report where it has hailed. And then go fly and look for roof damage, and then, knock on the door and say, look, there's a bad storm last night, right? I just happened to be flying from the street and notice that you've got a bunch of divots in your asphalt. Here's a quote, or asphalt shingles. Here's a quote.
Yeah. So that's a really good picture of residential. What about commercial?
Well, a lot of it is the same, but again, so the thermography is going to be the same that we had mentioned before, but there are additional use cases. We didn't talk about there being missing insulation in the wall. I mean, that's obvious. You can see it. But another thing that we're seeing a lot with thermography in commercial building is being able to kind of see through walls. So if you got a block wall, for example, and there's hollow cells and filled cells, right? And when you're filling with grout, sometimes that grout gets hung up, and there should be blowout holes to be able to, inspection holes to be able to check it. But it doesn't always work. So what we see some contractors do is put their drone and observe a wall heat up and with the morning sun.
Okay.
And as that wall warms up with the morning sun, the hollow cells, that heat's going to transfer really, really quick. The cells that are filled with grout won't, because there's a lot more thermal mass. So you're going to be able to see all of the lines of where the grout is or should be. So again, you can improve that. Those 3D models that I was talking about. So again, I should mention that if even without any ground control points, relative accuracy is within an inch. I mean, a lot of factors play into that, but you can get 1 inch accuracy, relative accuracy, with no additional ground control points. You have some ground control points that a surveyor might tie in. You're sub-inch all the time with absolute accuracy. and you fly the drone every week or every month, you can turn over to your client not just, 3-ring binders and flash drives with closeout documents. Is, hey, here's a 3D as-built of your project for every week that you can keep with for the lifetime of the building. So in 50 years from now, if you want to know what the underground utilities were doing or where they were at,
yeah,
just look them up. You just click on the button, boop, boop, boop. And it's to sub-inch accurate. It's better than locates.
right.
Locates aren't that good.
So yeah, if you have to go back and core out something, obviously there's other ways to know that, but you can see where it is.
Exactly. And again, liability is something that's always, when I was in this business, is always something that was in the back of my mind. If something were to go wrong, the building leaks, or more commonly, there's a natural disaster and it's unclear if the natural disaster caused the issue or if poor workmanship caused the issue, you can go back in time, pull up your 3D as-built and look, And it's important, I think, for everyone to understand that, when we talk about 3D as-built and with photogrammetry, people might in their minds think of BIM, where you need someone.
That's exactly where my mind was going, was BIM. Sorry, can you do me a favor, Joe? Because not everybody understands BIM. If they come more from the residential world, that might not be 2 seconds on what's BIM.
Okay, so it's an acronym for Building Information Modeling. And the simplest definition I can think of is building a building in the virtual environment before you build it in the actual environment.
Perfect.
And a lot of use cases with that, which I'm sure that's a whole podcast.
That's a whole thing. Yeah, we've got a couple of guests. If we haven't had them on already, they're coming.
Yeah. It's super good. But so photogrammetry is creating a 3D model from pictures. It's similar but different. You still get a 3D representation of your building, but you can make a 3D model in like 10 minutes. You fly the drone flies itself. You just hit the button.
It does it? You don't sit there and video game the thing?
No, you can. You can manually collect data. But there's free apps that will control your drone and fly your drone with more precision for what that kind of data than you can ever do manually. So your drone captures a bunch of photos and you literally upload them and the software does the work. So to create a 3D model of a house, we are talking literally from taking the drone out of the truck to looking at an email. We're talking about a 20-minute activity with very little training involved. You can't have none, but it's not like BIM. Autodesk it's not. I don't want to say it's not intuitive, but it's involved. You need some skills to be able to work that. It's not the same, so you can go 0 to 60 in a relatively short period of time. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we have a professional development class at Clemson. It's an 8-week class. It's online. That gets your license and teaches you how to fly with a simulator. And in a 2-week period of time, through an online class, you learn everything you need to know to be able to make a 3D model with confidence and share it and all that kind of stuff.
Great.
So that's just a point I wanted to make is when people say that, this is great, I would love to have it in a business, but I'm not big enough or I don't have the expertise. That ain't a barrier. You can get them. Anybody can get it.
It's amazing with this technology. You have to choose which technology you're going to chase as a business owner. But I'm pretty easy to read. I want to chase the ones that are going to help me make more money, win better jobs. I think about, I know we've got a couple listeners here that are in exterior window cleaning, like rope access, skyscraper window cleaning. And those guys are always talking about, should we get into caulking, recaulking windows and all the exterior maintenance, along with some of the pest control or cleanups. What I think is it a pigeon can generate 40 pounds of poop a year?
I hadn't seen that
crazy.
Statistic.
But... Yeah, it's crazy. I could be off. But anyways, it's a lot. It's more than you'd think of the size of that bird, right?
Yeah.
But that, that of course is something that builds up on a property. It doesn't look good. But even the caulking around the windows, getting into that sub trade inside a window cleaning, you're already up there. You already know what you're doing. Right. Being able to take that imagery and see where you've got heat loss or breakage in the failures in the caulking.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and again, I'll mention, so there's a particular software that I have in my brain that we teach for our courses. And again, you can just go to the computer and you go to, it's in the computer, there's a software package, and you go to, within the software, Google Earth. So you pick the building, and then you just draw like a little square around what you want to inspect horizontally, or like you're describing vertically. Well, it will pre-program the drone to go up 10 feet, go the length of the building, go up 10 feet, go the other length of the building, and just take a picture. And then you got all those pictures. No one wants to look at literally thousands of pictures potentially, but you throw it in this software, it uploads to the cloud,
and
then now you've got
together.
Exactly. It creates a mesh, and you can just look and then annotate and say, look, Mr. or Mrs. Owner, you've got caulking separating here, and you mark a note of it. And then you email them a 3D model, and it sells itself. Like, do you want this legitimate, see it with your own eyes work, or do you not want you want to postpone the maintenance? I mean, that's a business decision, but you can take the mystery out of what needs to be done.
I love it. So looking at where drones are today, and for a lot of people, including me, this is new conversation. Never heard of this technology, not using this technology. Where's it going in the future? What do we, you're the professor. Oh, look at the smile at Joe's face. Oh my God.
Well, my crystal ball has been shattered so many times that it's almost like shell shock, I guess. But here's a few things I can tell you that I'm certain of. And this is really just looking over the past few years and using that to progress and project into the next couple of years. The regulations are great, and they're getting better. And when I say great, they're very non-restrictive.
You mean the governmental regulations?
Yes. Yeah. Part 107 is what we use here in the U.S. And there are some common sense limitations. Can't go higher than 400 feet, and cloud. It's common sense and good stuff. The biggest limitation that they have, and it's for good reason, is that you can't fly beyond line of sight. The FAA is working on that. They're developing what they kind of internally call Part 108, although it may not be actually called that, where it's rules for being able to fly beyond line of sight. So what that means is contractors, instead of having to be on site to inspect something, they launch a drone from across town to conduct an inspection autonomously.
So they don't even have to drive over there to do the estimate. Be there. Right.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly. So that will have impact with construction. It has huge impacts with like law enforcement, search and rescue, and some of the public sector things.
Yeah.
So that's coming, and that has a window of, between my crystal ball, 1 to 3 years. I think we'll start seeing that. Hardware is going to continue to get better and better. I mean, if you look at where things were 5 years ago, compare that to the hardware that's now, we're going to have, cameras with 80 times optical zoom. So you can just park that thing nowhere near.
It's technology, right? It's going to drop in cost, increase in quality, and probably go through some dramatic change in technology at some point in the next couple of years beyond where it is today.
Right. So I see that being a big change. I see software in that same vein. Software is the same thing, but where it's going to get better is autonomy, where we're going to more and more the pilot won't be needed. We're already seeing some of this now, where you'll have a drone nest and you just park it on top of a trailer and set it up on J1, and then every Friday from there on out, the drone automatically flies, collects its data, comes back to the nest, and then sits there till the next week. And again, the software processing that data, sending out emails to the world autonomously, basically taking the human out of that data collection.
One of the questions that keeps coming up for me, and you might hear this, and this might not be your area of expertise, but I'm imagining a contractor listening to this show right now who does residential multifamily buildings. So it's a tower with 100 suites, just to say.
Okay.
What's the quick privacy concern question? Like, we got to scan this building, but now you've got 100 tenants saying, "There's a drone looking in my window. What are you doing?" Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So privacy is a sticky wicket. But so let me kind of lay out a couple of markers here, though. So one, you do need to have a license to fly a drone commercially. The FAA does not touch privacy at all. So there's nothing in those regulations that deals with that. Sure. Privacy is always on a local regulatory basis. And privacy laws are going to vary from municipality to municipality. Now, generally speaking, though, kind of, with nuances, you have to ask yourself, does the person you're collecting data of have a reasonable expectation of privacy? All right. And if they do, then you might be violating those, peeping Tom type of laws, or other similar regulations.
If I make that the title of this episode, we're going to get thousands of downloads. Sorry, I won't. But
yeah, exactly. I don't know if I can prevent someone from doing it. So that's generally it. Is you want to avoid, violating someone's reasonable expectation of privacy. But sometimes you can do it without knowing you're doing it. So you might, so that building, for example, you might have asked every one of those tenants, hey, we were doing an inspection, we're going to bring the drone out on such and such a time, such a date, so close all your windows. You might have done that. But when you're doing your flight, you might be scanning the building, but accidentally the condo that's right next to it or something, you capture that data. All right. So general rules are limit what you get. All right. Turn off the camera when you're not doing it. When you realize that you capture data that you're not going to use or need, delete it immediately. Not even if you don't expect there to be a problem, like you accidentally kept some windows in the background, beat it, whatever, just delete it. Because if you deleted it, no harm, no foul, right? It's the next best thing to have not captured it.
And lots of buildings are built like right next to each other. You think about the downtown core of any city; they're right on each other.
Right. So that's the very protective side of it. But you also have to think that from the FAA and really everyone's point of view, a drone is an aircraft. So if you're thinking to yourself, do I have a reasonable expectation of privacy? Do you have a reasonable expectation of privacy from a helicopter? So if you're sunbathing on your pool, and a helicopter goes by, do you have an expectation of privacy from that? Maybe not. I mean, there's a lot of legislation that goes into this. The expectation of privacy that you might have is that you would be viewed from 500 feet with a very loud, instrument coming your way, so it's very obvious that it's coming. So you might have a reasonable expectation of privacy from a helicopter where it might be different than a drone. So
it takes more research. What I'm hearing from you is it takes research and an intelligent approach.
Yep.
But it's not a reason to stay out of this.
No. For certain not. There's best practices to follow. And 99 times out of 100, if you're being a good neighbor and you're just being a good person, then you're fine. You're not going to be in any kind of trouble at all.
Yeah. This is so interesting. I imagine we're going to have you back every little while, like maybe every couple of years for an update on this. So I hope you're open to that.
Oh, I am. I mean, I think a couple of years might be like several generations of involvement in technology, but
well, that's why, right? It'll be a completely new conversation about use cases of drones, how we're seeing it in the field. Maybe I'd love to talk to, if anybody out there listening is using drones in their business, contact me. I'd love to have you as a guest and maybe have the three of us on.
Oh yeah, I love doing round table discussions with contractors and helping them incorporate drones into their business.
Yeah, that might be a really cool episode. Hey Joe, if somebody wants to find you in this world, you mentioned you're a professor at Clemson.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not everything, but how do we find you if we want to find you?
Right. I mean, so I'm happy to share my email address. It's jmburg, BURG at clemson.edu. But probably the easiest thing is if you were to type in Burgett and Clemson, I'll pop up. But maybe even the easiest way, and I'll just mention this one thing. Earlier in the pod, I mentioned I teach drone classes, of course, to our undergraduate and graduate courses students. But through our Clemson's professional development office, I do teach online drone classes for contractors. So I'm a contractor. This is for you guys. So if you want to get in the skies the right way and get your license, learn to fly with a simulator, learn that photogrammetry to create those 3D models, learn all the compliance tools so that you don't have to guess about what airspace. It's easy. And thermography. We have an 8-week class online, we would love to have you. Just Google Clemson Drone or ClemsonDrone.com. That's our course homepage, ClemsonDrone.com. Take a look, contact me. It is geared for you. If you're a contractor looking to get with drones, this is the one-stop shop to do it.
Yeah. And I hope I can share this, but you said you guys are looking for PhD students as well. There's such a demand for this that you guys have opened it up from undergrad all the way through.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're Clemson's an R1 institution, which means that we teach, but we do a lot of research, and we do research because we have graduate students and PhD students. And I can find PhD students. I can find them, especially from overseas. But if you are a contractor and have an interest and with experience and have an interest in getting a PhD, you are a rare commodity. And if you're looking to get your PhD, we have a number of assistantships that take care of tuition plus a stipend. And if you're willing to invest a couple of years and continue your education and you want to teach at some place, including Clemson, man, reach out to me. I would be happy to, if I can't help you, even if it's not drone related,
point you in the right direction.
Yeah, there's lots of faculty that would love to partner with you and help you get your PhD, as well as help them with their research.
Yeah. Construction technology has just gone through the roof. It's been stagnant for how many years? I don't mean stagnant, but little things have been changing. But then suddenly, with the use of technology and the addition of software and all sorts of different permutations, man, it's through the roof. It's going to continue to change.
Yeah, and it needs to. I mean, I think we've all seen those productivity charts comparing construction to manufacturing, and they don't look good for us. So we need to do what everyone else is doing. We have challenges they don't have. So I defend our industry against that chart.
Right, yeah, because you've got just everything is built.
Everything's a prototype. Give me another industry where every product you produce is a prototype outside and costs millions of dollars. I mean, they're out there, but it's not fair to compare us to pumping out iPhones or something.
However, it is good to do that comparison so that we can find the opportunities. It's just cross-pollination. What is another industry doing that we can learn from? How do we apply that here? So that's, of course, why we do it. It also puts a little bit of scare in people, like, oh my God, we waste so much time in building this structure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's true. Very true. I look at it is that there is a lot of waste. So there's lots of ways for us easy ways to improve. Some of these other places, there's only so much more you can squeeze out of that workflow, but we have a lot of areas that we can squeeze, and it doesn't take a lot. I mean, our profit percentages are sometimes single digits. So if we can squeeze and we can get 10% more out of our labor, what does that end up to our bottom line?
If your profit percentages are single digits, please call Dominic Rubino at any time.
Well, it depends. I did a lot of CM work, and it is single digits.
Yeah. Well, you have to be careful. Let's not. I'll take this off in another direction, so I'll be careful here. Joe, thank you. This has been fantastic. I think for a lot of people, you open up their eyes. For quite a few people, they've thought, "Oh, I have a reason to buy a new toy."
Yeah.
Right?
Tool.
Sorry, tool.
Yeah, new
you
reason.
Just make sure it's painted black and yellow, and we can justify anything, right? Or orange.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dom. I enjoyed this discussion. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, me too. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Well. Thank you, Joe, for being a guest on the show. That was really cool. Very cool information. And folks listening, I hope you got a lot of new insights into where you could take this business in the future. I tried real hard to separate residential and commercial so that both types of audiences would understand how this could be used. Residential guys, did you see how you could use this for windows, for roofing, for exterior siding? Commercial guys, did you see how we talked about the applications there? Think about this. Now, you may not choose to put this in place in your business, and that's fine. But when you do your strategic plan, and you knew I was going to work that into the conversation, when you think about what your company needs to look like in 10 years, in 3 years, in 1 year, what is it you're going to do in the next 3 months to make that happen? Now, of course, that's very common language here on this show, because this is the business of the construction and contracting business. That's what the whole podcast is about. So if this stretched your mind a little bit, I'm happy. If this excited you because you thought, hey, I could buy a new toy and learn about it, that's great. Maybe you found a way now to reduce the cost to serve, which is how much it costs you to do an estimate on a project, and increase your sales conversion rate, because you're going to impress the heck out of a client. If you come to them, let's say you're a window contractor, and you say, look at all the heat loss you have through these windows. We have a solution, da, da, da. And the next guy shows up and he has a nice, pretty flyer, but he doesn't have the kind of technology you've got. You start to see how the payback is there. There's a business case that can be made for you inside this technology if you want it. Anyways, stay tuned. The next segment, as you know, is questions and answers with Dom. That's where we take questions from you and answer them here live on the show. If you want to submit a question to that, please do. Just go to speakpipe.com/ask Dom. Thanks a lot. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Questions and Answers with Dom. You too can leave a question here. Hey, today's question comes from Tony. Tony sent me an email. He says, hey, listen, I do a lot of handyman work, and the worst work for me is drywall. The guys I'm competing with are bidding on square feet, but we're losing our butts on that work. Butt with two T's. All right. Well, let's have a discussion about that. Now, even if you're not doing drywall work, there's other work where your competition is bidding on a per square foot or per board foot basis. Let's dig into that here. Thanks, Tony. Hey, everybody. And hey, Tony, thank you so much for emailing me there. Appreciate it. Good question. And really good observation on your part, man. I mean, first of all, let's stop and give credit where it's due. The fact that you know that drywall, the drywall piece of your handyman business is a problem, that's a big deal, dude. So you're a forward-facing contractor. You're taking the right steps in your life to continue moving forward in your business. You're making smart decisions. Man, just keep doing it. I hope you picked up a lot of those things by listening to the show and applying them. So again, I appreciate your email. Hey, listen, anybody else out there listening, if you have questions for me, just go to speakpipe.com/ask Dom. Tony emailed me, which is totally fine, but we can hear your voice if you go to speakpipe.com/ask Dom, and we'll answer your question just like we're answering Tony's here. I lose my butt on drywall work when it's by the square foot, and there's other guys out there quoting it on the square foot. And the reason for that is they're not business people. They're not business people. If you're listening to the show, you have already squeezed yourself through the birth canal. I wanted you to have a visual there. Like you have reborn yourself as a business person who just happens to run a contracting, a trades, a construction company. It's a different thing. You're already listening to different messages. You're already hearing different things. You're starting to see the world in a different way. You're curious about other things, not some guy who goes, yeah, I could drywall. I'll do it. Just something per square foot. That's not how business works. And if you've got people who come back to you, clients who come back to you and go, well, everybody else quoted me on a square foot basis. Well, there you go. It's not your client. So Tony, here's what you got to do. First of all, you have to add everything up. So for those of you who are lucky enough to have pen and paper in front of you, go ahead and write these down. If you don't have a pen and paper in front of you, but you're curious, contact me later. We'll walk through this, okay? But in order to come up with a price, Tony, here's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to, obviously, on a job-by-job basis, understand your material cost. Now, that's obvious, right? But you're going to have outside corners, rounded corners. You might have different applications. You might, maybe you're also doing the mudding and the taping. Maybe you're doing the stippling. I don't know. But whatever your materials are, add that all together, right? Including waste. Waste has to be figured into this, right? What are the incidentals going to be? This is one where I see people losing a lot of money because first, it's hard to track incidentals. Let's be clear. And it's easy to lose money on incidentals. I used to lose a ton of money on brushes. Just my guys went through brushes like they were going out of style. And I had to find a simple system to overcome things like brushes and poly and solvent. Actually, in the drywall part of the business, you also have poly, solvents, filters for the shop vac, masks, rags, etc. And you might go, Dom, come on. It could take me half a day to drywall somebody's garage, or it could take me 6 weeks to drywall, a commercial warehouse, whatever it is. 6 weeks, man, that better be a Tesla factory. But you know what I mean? It's variable. Just take your total costs for the year and what you spend on incidentals and divide it by the number of days you work. And then now you have a per day cost of incidentals, just stuff that comes up. And when if anybody gives you guff on that, remember that when you go to a shop to get your car worked on, they always say there's shop incidentals, and it covers things like rags, lubricant, extra nuts and bolts, and things like that, right? So you're not doing anything different here. So far we know that we need to add up our materials cost, our incidentals cost, right? If you're using RAM board, whatever that is, that has to be added in there. Your time. So time has to be added in a few different ways, right? So there, first of all, just the regular time to do the job. I want to remind you, you have to do the estimating for the time, not on how fast you would do it as the owner of the business, but on how fast your medium average guy would do it. Oh, suddenly the room got very quiet. Why is that? Why is it that other people don't work as hard or as fast as us? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that one at all. I just know that it happens. So estimate like your medium guy. Estimate maybe just a little under your medium guy, right? Don't set yourself up for false expectations. This is what the job is going to take. Then you have to think about what's the oops time? Like where could mistakes come in? Add a little bit of that fudge time in there because some of it's, you need it. You need it for sure. What about your project management time? Now, some of you are already holding up your hands going, oh, Rubino, you live in a dream world, my friend. Nobody is going to pay for all of that. Well, actually, that's not true. No, that's not true at all. The person that already pays for that is you. Oh, I sound like a you-know-what right now, don't I? But that's why you're here. You're here for us to have just a straightforward conversation about this. If the customer's not paying for it, you are. It's coming out of your pocket because the cost gets paid anyways. So listen, if you don't want to charge for your project management time, just start tracking it. How much time does it actually take you? And then once you start to see the logic, once you start to see the numbers, you'll go, okay, well, I should probably start charging for a bit of that. That's where the justification, that's where it's okay for you to say, actually, I draw a salary or I draw a wage because I do work on the site. It's project management work, right? What about go backs? How many go backs are you doing? Track it at least, but start to figure it into a job. Okay. There's no job that's a slam dunk. It's never just easy. Even when somebody says, oh, just come on in, fix the bathroom. It's just a couple of sheets of drywall. It can't be that much. You've still got to go load the truck in the morning, go get the drywall from, I don't know, wherever you get it. Now you got to bring it into the house. You got to get it down the stairs. Oh, wait, we have to cut it down because it won't fit down the stairs without dinging their wall. Oh, we ding the wall. Now we got to fix their wall. Normal conversation, right? But you see where this is going. So we have to track all those things. You also have to add in the costs of things like your insurance, your labor, and your burden rate. I know I said time before, but I want to break this down. Labor and burden rate. You might not be familiar with the term burden rate. Burden is like carrying a heavy burden. And the reason for burden is it allows you to add up the soft costs of hiring somebody, right? So you might be looking at your books, you're like, I'm already quoting really well, Dom. I don't know why we're not making money. So let's just say you pay a guy $25 an hour. Just doesn't matter what trade it is, right? But really, $28 is going out of your pocket every hour. That other $3 is the burden rate. It's the soft costs of having that person. And I won't get into the definitions of burden rate. If you want to look it up, feel free. The internet's full of definitions of burden rate and how to calculate that number. But you have to add your labor and your burden. Again, this is one of the things we call profit leaks. When you're in the coaching program, there's 1,000 of these little things, just thousands of them. And you got to go and start to shore them up because money leaks out of your company. A little bit here, drip there, drip there. I want it dripping back into your pocket, not dripping out into the world. It's just wasted money. You're just burning it, right? Add up all your overheads. And then here's the next thing I want you to do. I want you to put in your profit margin as an expense. I want you to add in your expected profit on this job as an expense. Treat your profit as seriously as you treat your materials, as seriously as you treat your tools. You're in business to make a profit. It's different if you're going to help your brother-in-law do the garage. Okay, I get it. Then you're going to get a couple of beers and some pizza. But that's not what this is. If you come over to drywall my garage or drywall my bathroom or drywall my attic or renovation or my commercial warehouse, it's a job. This is a business. I have to treat it like a business, right? So what's your profit margin? Add that in as an expense. And by the way, if you want more information on that, you already read Mike Michalowicz's book, Profit First. Add in the profit first. You got to have the profit in there, right? Otherwise, why are we doing this? Now, some of you are listening to this thinking, well, it's too much effort to change to another podcast episode. Oh, my finger hurts. I don't want to push the button to listen to something else. I'll just keep listening to old Dommy here. But listen, if you're saying you don't believe me, and if you're saying you're not going to do this change, please keep in mind If you think you're going to lose work because any of these are going to price you out of the market, you've got the wrong customer. You have the wrong customer. I don't want that work. I can only do work that's profitable. For those of you who've gone to 10x Built, the website, 10xbuilt.com, you heard Al talk about losing $3,400 on a job. Now, Al is a businessman who happens to be a home renovator. The guy is sharp. He's on. We've been working together for a couple of years now, and we found out he lost $3,400 on a job when we started to do this kind of autopsy on a job. And he said, Dom, I was excited when I found out because now I know what to go fix. Well, that's what coaching did for him, right? It gave him that perspective. It allowed him the time to stop and look at it. And to Al's credit, he sees the problem. Now he goes and fixes it. It's sometimes you just have to see the problem to fix it. But if he didn't know it was there, he just paid $3,400 to do this lady's kitchen out of his own pocket. Or to make it even more impactful to you, that $3,400, remember, that's below zero. So it's not like he didn't make any money. He actually took money from his own pocket to pay for that lady's kitchen. And you are probably doing the same thing in some places in your business. Tony, you've already identified that, right? We don't have to, but we have to find the systems and we have to find the way to do that. Anyways, if you want to be like Al and so many other people, come in and have a look at 10X Built Coaching. It's the coaching program that we run here. I'd love to have you in there with us, working side by side so we can show you the profit leaks and help you shore them up. Just go to 10xbuilt.com, kick around the website, and if you like it, hit apply. And if that happens, we'll get on the conversation. All right. Thanks for checking in, folks. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Tony, for the question.